Global. Rucha Pande is a social sector leader working on education and systems change. She also serves as a CEO at Mantra for Change and works on programs that aims to transform public education in India. With over a decade of experience, she focuses on research, program design, and collaborative solutions for large-scale social impact. Richa, please note that this presentation is recorded for the benefit of the participants. Over to you.
Thanks, Yasmin. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. Super excited. I heard about the makeup of the participants, and it's really cool that we have a lot of you who are just entering employment, taking a part in this. I think that's very exciting. I'm super glad to be here. This is going to be a very interactive discussion. We have about an hour. Just give me a moment to share my screen and we can get started. Yay. Is my screen visible to you? Can you just let me know?
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
Rucha.
Okay, perfect. I hope you have your chat boxes ready because I'm going to be asking a lot of questions and you're going to be responding in the chat bot, or feel free to unmute as well. But I know there's a lot of us over here, so it might work better on chat as well. Let's get started. Um, Before we go into the education sector and how it is today, let's go back to when you were in school. Not so long back for you, but a little while for me. But let's go back to when you were in school. Look at the image that's up on your screen and tell me, which student were you when you were in school? Were you the student studiously, climbing the ladder? Were you the student pranking others and being like this one pretending to be a shark? Which student were you? Pick the number and put that on the chat box. Let's get a feel for how are we in our school days. We have a 9. Let's see. Dearly holding on to the boat. And then 8. Let's see. Or working with other students to do something. We have a 2. Looking ahead. When do I leave this ship and find the next island that I'm going to be on? Wow, very, very responses. Really good to see that. We have a 20 as well. Oh, that was me as well. I was sitting under a tree and reading a lot of the time that I was in school as well, and into college as well. I really resonate with that one. We have some 10s. Cleaning. I had to, yes, actually, in one of the schools that I studied, we also had, it was a way of building student discipline. We did engage in like cleaning school premises, etc. I see a lot of 20s. That's interesting. Very cool. Thank you for sharing all of your responses and taking a little bit of a walk down memory lane and thinking of how your school days was. Let's now jump into how school is now and how is the education system today. We're going to do this again through an activity. I want you to consider the population of Indonesia, the country of Indonesia. Does anyone know what population is? And what demographic or what number in the education system do you think it talks about? For example, if you think the population of India is 10, what do you think 10 represents in education? So again, let's see some responses. Feel free to look up the numbers as well, and let's see if we get the right response. So consider the population of Indonesia, around 400 million. A little bit lesser than that. So Kalpana, I'm asking what's the population of Indonesia? And Hanuman is saying less than 400 million. You're close, but it's definitely less than that. And my second part is, what do you think this number represents in the education space? 200 to 250 million? Yes, that's right. Thank you, Lingeshwar. So yes, Indonesia's population is around that much. Any guesses on what 250 million represents in the education sector? Any guesses? What is 250 million in the education sector in India? By the way, is everyone okay with English? I can also do a little bit of Hindi, but and maybe Marathi, but those are the three. Just let me know if you would like me to mix up any languages. Yes, so we have 250 million, 260 million. You're right. What number do you think this represents in the education sector? I'm going to give you a hint. It's the number of some stakeholder in the education system. Okay, we're stuck on the yes. So Likita, you're absolutely right. Um, the entire population of Indonesia is approximately equal to the number of children studying in schools in India. Yes, Jyotika, yes, Kirti, Priya, I see we're all getting in the right direction now. We have approximately 250 million children studying in schools in India. You've got the drift now of the questions that I'm going to ask. I'll move on to the next one. Consider the population of Japan. Which actor do you think this represents? We're taking a minute to Google. Yeah, feel free to look up all of these sources. But again, same question. What's the population of Japan? And which actor do you think that represents in the education space? We have a Yogeshwari says 123.4 million. Super specific. Thank you for that. Yes, you're in the right direction. 100 million, 120 million, 150 million. Yes, so you're all absolutely in the right direction. About 120 million. Now, any guesses as to what 120 million represents in the education space? Teachers? No, we have much less teachers. I wish, actually, we wouldn't need so many teachers, but no, it's not teachers. Okay, I'll give you a hint. This number is approximately half of the previous number. So that's a hint for you. What do you think this represents? I am glad. I like that response. We should look that up. Girl student. So Likita, you're absolutely right. It's approximately, so again, the entire population of Japan is approximately equal to the number of girls we have in schools today. I have two more questions like this, and then we'll see what that means for us. Now consider the population of the United Arab Emirates. Again, same question. What's this number and what do you think this represents? So we'll take a minute again to quickly Google the answer, to look for the answer, and then we'll think about what this represents in the education space. 10 million. Yes, you're right. It is 10 million. Now, what number do you think this represents in the education space? Undergraduates. No. Educational institutions. You know what? You're partially right. So we have, actually, no. No, its education institutions will be less than that. Yogeshwari, you're on the right path. So the number 10 million, and again, approximately the entire population of the United Arab Emirates is the number of teachers that are teaching in the education system today. Last question, and then we'll unpack some of this. Now consider the population of New Zealand and Australia combined. So it's gotten a little bit tougher. The last one has gotten a little bit tougher. You need to do an addition. But same question. What's the number and what do you think this represents? $33 million. That was really fast. Yes, you're right. It's approximately just above a 30 million. Wonderful. You're all on the right track. Now, what number do you think this represents? This one is a slightly tricky one. What number do you think this represents? Schools? No. Students. Himanshi, you're on the right track. But we already said there are 250 million students. So what is this 30 million students about? Graduates, undergraduates. You know, I should have gotten a number about undergraduates as well. Seems to be an important number for you all. High school students, no. But you're on the right track thinking about students. I'm going to give you one last minute and then reveal the answer. Students enrolled across higher education and skilling. No, that's much higher. Okay, I'm going to reveal the response to you. Unfortunately, this number is approximately the number of dropouts that we have in the education space. So a lot of children begin schooling, but due to various reasons, it could be environmental reasons, it could be family reasons, it could be motivation challenges, it could be resource challenges, multiple challenges, but approximately it's this number that drop out of schools or that have dropped out of schools. And that's something that you can learn more about. There's not a lot of good data sources on this, but I'd encourage you to find out more about this. We got a little bit of a glimpse into the education system through the numbers, right? But numbers is only part of understanding the education system, which is the scale part of it. And along with scale comes diversity. You are all from different states in the country, different cities. I think I had a number somewhere. You're across multiple cities and states in the country. You know how much the context changes from one state to the other state, or even changes from one district to another district. It's so diverse in this context. Our languages are changing, our cultures are changing, our priorities are changing. So that's part of the challenge. The second part of the challenge is the quality of education. For those of you who've either studied in or gone to government schools, I'm sure you know what are the kinds of challenges that we see in government schools, from basic resources like electricity, desks, drinking water, to how teaching learning is happening in the school, to how parents are interacting with the school. There are a bunch of challenges related to the quality of education, especially public education in the country. And finally, urgency. The students who are in school today are not going to be in schools 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. They're constantly, moving forward. And so anything that we do, we have to keep in mind who we're designing for and how is it going to support them. There's an urgency of the problem. Children are either dropping out or they're looking for employment and may not have the right employment opportunities. So there's an urgency to this problem. But all of this is only the tip of the iceberg, right? If we go below the iceberg, there's a lot of things that influence all of the numbers that you've put on the chat box, or all of the quality challenges we talked about. If you go beneath the iceberg, If you look at some of the underlying root causes, if you look at some of the underlying challenges, then you begin to think about how can you solve this in the long term. For example, what is the kind of institutional capacity? What is the kind of quality frameworks or data systems available to us? All of these underlying problems that may not be very obvious in the beginning influence how education happens in the public education system. Now, behind all of this are real people who lead real change. How many of you are familiar with the public education structure in India? Just a quick show of hands or a yes or a no on the chat box. Government school system. I see hands raised. A bunch of hands raised. Great. So many of you are familiar with the government school system in India. So I'll just, for the benefit of the others, quickly walk through this as well. You have obviously students and the school at the center with teachers and head teachers. Then you have what's called a cluster of schools. It's approximately 10 to 15 schools make up a cluster. And then you have stakeholders supporting the cluster. And then you have the block, which is approximately, again, maybe 200 to 250 schools make up a block. Again, you have the block education officer on the administrative side, and then you have the block resource persons on the academic side. So you see that in the system, we also have a division between the administrative side and the academic side. Next comes the district. Similarly, we have the district education officer and the district institutes that are responsible for training and development. Now, the size of a district varies a lot in the Indian context. It could range anywhere from 500 schools to 2,000, 4,000 schools in India. And finally, at the state level, again, you have academic or administrative bodies on this side, which is Samagra Shiksha. And then you have academic bodies, which is SCRT, the State Council for Education, Research and Training. So I just wanted to give you a glimpse of going beneath the or unpacking the education system a little bit and recognizing who are all of these different people that make education change happen in the country. And so anything that we design, anything that we develop, any change that we want to enable, we have to keep all of these people in mind. We have to think, how do we support the cluster resource person? We have to think, what role does the block education officer play? We have to think, who is district accountable to and what do they're accountable for, right? Those are things that we need to think through. So as you go about trying to identify your problem statement and as you try and identify what your solution is going to be, you have to keep in mind who are these different people that make up the education system. So that was a little bit about the education landscape of India. On the final part of unpacking the education system a little bit more, and we are again going to play a game. I'm going to have some sentences up on the screen, and you are going to tell whether you think this is a myth or do you think this is a fact. So do you think this is true or do you think this is false? With me? Can I get some thumbs up or yeses too, so I know you're with me? Okay, great. Nice. Thank you for those thumbs up. So we'll get started. Teachers' main priority is teaching in classrooms. Do you think this is a myth or do you think this is a fact? Just put it on the chat. What do you think? This is a myth. Many are saying myth. Most are saying myth. Then someone feels very strongly that this is a myth. Okay, very interesting. Can I request you to either unmute or put on the chat? Why do you think this is a myth? Wow, we have one fact and everyone else is saying myth. I'd love to hear from some of you. Why do you think this is a myth? Teacher's role is to deliver the concept, does not depend on the place. They only try to help the student to get marks. Okay. Online education platforms that teach more than the offline teacher. Okay. Teacher's ultimate goal isn't the act of talking, but the result of student understanding and growth. They would be okay as long as students understand lessons. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your responses. And again, honestly reflecting on what do we know about teachers in government schools. Um, so a little bit about our experience with government school teachers, right? They're coming in with really high qualifications. They're required to pass exams, get qualifications. Second, even when teachers do want to teach, even when they do want to prioritize teaching, they're unfortunately caught up in a lot of things. If some of your familiar teachers end up having to go for election duties, they have a ton of administrative work to do. There's a lot of data filling that they need to do. A lot of times they need to take care of things that are not related to teaching. So this is neither a complete false nor a complete truth. There's a nuance to it. We have to think about what are the challenges that our teachers face, even when they're motivated to teach. Next one. Parents are most concerned about economic contribution of children to the family. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? Depends. I see you've gotten the drift now. I'm seeing more nuanced responses. We have myth. Again, we're leaning towards the myth. And we have some facts. Okay, now this is getting interesting. We have a mix of responses in the group. But looks like the group is leaning towards fact now. Wow, really, really interesting mix in responses over here. So again, I'll go back to our experience with parents that send their children to government schools. They have very high aspirations for their children, and I have an image coming up later on. Um, but every parent that we talk to, they say that I want my child to grow, I want my child to develop, I want my child to not face the same challenges I faced growing up. I want them to be happy. I want them to have fulfilling jobs. So maybe it's a little bit of a myth that parents are only concerned about economic progress. Parents do want their children to develop and lead fulfilling lives. And I'll go into that a little bit. We have some parent voices coming up as well. I'll go to the next one. Technology is difficult to use in government schools. True or false? Myth or fact? Fact. Okay. Most people are saying fact. Okay, we're leaning mostly towards fact. Again, you know what my response is going to be, that it's not that straightforward. We do have some wonderful stories of how technology has supported schools, and I do have some stories coming up. But we do have to recognize that when it comes to government schools, we're still trying to balance between getting the right resources in the schools, but also having high aspirations for our schools. So there are states in India that have taken a lot of effort in enabling technology in schools, whether it's computer labs, smart boards, Wi-Fi availability to begin with. A lot of states have actually taken efforts to integrate these in schools. But we also have to recognize, like we spoke about the scale, we spoke about multiple systemic challenges, we spoke about multiple layers in the system. We have to understand that it's difficult to do this at a very fast rate, and across all of the schools. Gossip type myth. I get that. So we do, again, it's a nuanced response. There are definitely challenges, but there are definitely some stories of change. So if you're interested in seeing how governments have implemented technology in education, we'd be happy to chat, and you'll see some stories coming up as well. There are some great stories that we can learn from and see what do we take away from them. The fourth one, there is no innovation or desire for change in government schools. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? We have again mixed responses, but leaning towards myth. Yeah, it's nice that you're leaning towards myth. This is really heartwarming. Um, because in fact there is desire for change in government school systems. There is an aspiration to do even better and to deliver even better education for our students. We have to find the right people and support them with the right kind of solutions and recognize that they are living with so many constraints of their own. So in fact, there is a desire for innovation, there is a desire for change. We have to meet them where they are. Yes, Trishad, I agree with you. It's not uniform across all states in India, completely taken. And that's why it's maybe a slightly more nuanced response. But most people that we've talked to are actually very open. We just have to understand what are the constraints that they're coming in with and then co-create with them. But I'm so glad to see that a lot of you are thinking of this as a myth, and really see hope in how we can work with the system to improve education in the country. The last one, there's no budget in public education. Myth or fact? Sushant says fact. Shahid says myth. Absolutely fact. It looks like we have a mix again, but leaning towards fact. All right, we're leaning towards fact. But we do have some, we're saying myths. Lovely. Thank you for your responses. And again, I'm sure you're already expecting my response, which is that it's not a straightforward answer. Can there be more allocation of budget in education? 100%. Right now, it's about 3% of our GDP. So can we spend more on education? Definitely. Do we need to? Definitely. But that's not where the story ends. Today, even when we have, budget allocated in education, a lot of times it goes unutilized because sometimes we are not sure where do we utilize this, how do we utilize this, in what time frame do we utilize this, where are we allowed to utilize this, so on and so forth. So again, you need to think through and find out. And again, I have a story coming up. So all of the ones that you saw on the screen, we'll go a little bit deep into these with some stories coming up. But again, it's not a straightforward answer. For sure, we can allocate more budget in the education system, but at the same time, we have to improve how we even utilize the budget that's already allocated. And maybe that's an area that you're interested in and can explore further and see what role can technology play in helping utilize that budget. I'm not going to go into some cases that we have seen of playing role in solving some education challenges. So maybe 10 minutes I'll walk through that and then we'll have the final 10-15 minutes or so for any questions, comments, or thoughts that you have. So the first case, it's up on the screen. a northern state in India with about 20,000 schools. This is government schools, right? I'm talking purely government schools or public schools. The challenge is that teacher mentors, so these are like teacher supervisors. Their role is to go observe classrooms, give feedback, support the teacher. Teacher mentors were visiting schools and noting their observations on paper. The impact was that there was no clear shared understanding of teaching practices and patterns across the state. Improvement efforts were either not happening or were not relevant. Now, before I told you what the state did, I would love to hear from some of you on what do you think might be a good solution over here? Take a minute, read the case on the screen, and share on the chat. What do you think could be a solution for this state? Just throw out ideas. It doesn't have to be completely thought through or right. What solution do you think would help over here? Give training to them? Training to the supervisors, you mean the teacher mentors? Okay. Yeah, that's a valid solution. And in fact, it was part of the solution as well. Any other thoughts? Thank you for that, Janani. Use a digital data collection system where teacher mentors record observation using mobile apps instead of paper. Thanks for that, Maria. And Trishant is sharing the same thing. So, in fact, that is what this state did. They converted those pen and paper observation forms to leveraging an existing app. So again, an important point, they didn't try and create new systems. They leveraged an existing data collection tool in the state to help mentors record observations. And this resulted in a bunch of things. One, it was much easier to fill that data. Number two, the data became visible to everybody. So the picture on the left-hand side that you see over here, those are actually some officers sitting at the state level looking at the data. You can see the bar graphs over there. They're looking at the data and they now have visibility into what's happening in these schools. Third important impact is that based on this data, they could actually lead much more relevant, I think somebody said earlier, trainings and capacity building for teachers or for other leaders. That's exactly what they were able to do. So on the right-hand side, you can see that the state then took efforts to actually lead better teacher development initiatives based on real data from the ground. You've got a sense of where we are going in this direction. So I have case two for you. Again, we're talking about government schools in India. The challenge is that policies or large improvement goals, we say like right to education, we need to have every school that has, say, a science lab, every school needs to have a library, or every student needs to learn so on. So these are very large improvement goals. But they're sometimes difficult to work with and can be really overwhelming for, school leaders, teachers, which leads them to feeling demotivated, underconfident, and maybe not a lot of improvement efforts. So now again, what do you think could be a solution for this? Again, whatever idea comes to your mind, there's no right or wrong answer. Camera monitoring of implementation. Okay, interesting. AI mentor. Interesting. Decentralized sprint-based model that focuses on micro wins, recognition of work and response from the government side. Amazing. I think you're all such great problem solvers and innovators. Break big goals into small, simple tasks. You're all absolutely in the right direction. That's what happened as well. So a partner organization actually partnered with the national education ministry to initiate micro improvements. So I saw micro wins somewhere on the chat. That is so cool. It's very similar. So we had thought of micro improvements and initiated those across the country. You can see on the digital solution that they used as well. It was left open for schools to really think about what could be some contextual, need-based challenges and solutions for schools, and they led their own initiatives. And you can see how teachers and leaders across states, you have some examples from Bihar and Gujarat over here, participated and actually took initiatives to improve their school. There's an example of a state as well over here. Just in the state of Uttar Pradesh, we had 10,000 such micro wins or micro improvements happen in that time frame. So this is again an idea of how technology could play a role in motivating stakeholders, enabling recognition. So yes, I heard somebody, I saw somebody put on the chat about recognition as well. Absolutely. I didn't put that image up over here, but based on this data, there was a lot of recognition efforts that the government did as well. There were a lot of photo books, coffee table books, awards, events based on these initiatives that schools took. All right. Third case, and I think, no, I have one more case after this. The third case, we're talking about some district institutes. So they had some budget available, but it often went unutilized. It's something that we spoke about a little bit earlier. So they did have budget allocated to them, but a lot of times it went unutilized, which means that this unutilized money was sent back either to the state or national institution, and the districts didn't really lead any district level initiatives. So you know the drill. What do you think could be a solution for this? AI analyzing approximate need of money and dividing the budget properly, making a proper budgeting. Yogeshwari, I think you're on a great direction. Back then, we didn't have AI, so we have a very non-AI solution that came in, a tracking system for budget. I'll wait for one or two more responses. Okay, so I will reveal to you finding the necessity and use the budget for that. Vaishnavi, you are absolutely on the right track. That's exactly where I was going. What we realized is that it was not a very simple problem of money going unutilized. When we tried to dig under the surface, which is again something that you will be doing, I'm sure, when you think of your problem statement, we asked some more questions. We tried to look beneath the surface and ask, why was this happening? What was causing it? What is the challenge that they were facing? And we realized that one, there was less awareness of the budget available and where it could be used. And second, there was a real problem of, so, in the government system, you need to have proper mechanisms in place as to where you can spend the budget. And we realized that these institutions could spend only to valid vendors, could spend only on valid vendors, like to purchase, equipment or resources and so on and so forth, which became a very big problem. And so what the state did is developed a system for or improve the system for onboarding vendors and making that process for the institution very easy to then, reach out to a vendor and spend that money. And you can see up on the screen, so just within 1 year, over here you had just 29, so approximately 30% or 14% expenditure, which increased to a whopping 75% expenditure. This is just within 1 year. And this is just by helping diets onboard the right kind of vendors or helping those institutions onboard the right kind of vendors. You have utilization that increased to 75%. Very powerful, right? And so it wasn't just about utilizing that budget. What happened is that then districts were actually leading some very relevant need-based programs in their district, which otherwise may not have happened. I'm on my last case. Again, we're thinking of government schools in India, and the challenge is that parent voices are not given enough spaces or opportunities. Parents were also fearful of going to school and interacting with school staff, which means that this strained the relationship among parents and teachers. And parents are really important stakeholders. Their voices were getting lost a little bit. So, back to you now. How might you solve this? Any thoughts? What could help address this challenge in government schools? Parents come together and discuss with each other. Unity wins. Parents are often scared because they don't want negative impact. So anonymous systems for feedback, yeah. Polling system, not PTMs. Why do you say not PTMs? PTMs was actually part of the solution. Teachers can visit student houses and interact with parents. Yes, that was also a part of the solution. You're all again absolutely on the right track. Again, before jumping into the solution, we tried to understand the problem a little bit more. How are parents currently coming to schools? Did teachers invite them? Did teachers have the PTM at the right time? Did teachers even interact with parents outside of the school? Questions like that. We tried to understand the challenge a little bit more before we thought of the solution. And so these were a combination of solutions that we went into. There was um, there was support for teachers in, again, something around micro improvements, micro wins we saw earlier, around how they could host really effective parent-teacher meetings. It's one thing to say ki parent-teacher meeting karo, but it's another to say this is what a good parent-teacher meeting looks like. This is how you could invite parents. This is what you could discuss in the PTMs. And that's what the tech solution enabled. And you know what? Every school invited parents in completely different ways. So one school invited parents by doing plays in the school. Another school invited parents by setting up an exhibition. Every school brought their own diversity, their own creativity, and their own flavor. But they all got support in thinking through how do they make PTMs better. We also heard parent voices. Um, Literally voices. So this is when AI started coming in a little bit, right? So we could have more conversational prompts with parents rather than just simply filling out a survey. So there was tech-enabled prompting and questions and conversations with parents. And parents talked about how they feel, what are their aspirations for students. We spoke about this earlier in our discussion. So the image that you see here are actually aspirations of parents for their children. They want them to become government officers, they want them to become doctors, teachers, IAS officers, pilots, engineers, so on and so forth. So we captured real parent voices and made those available to everyone. We also enabled, I think somewhere I saw, get community together. There's unity. Yeah, unity wins. That's also exactly what we enabled. So we had Shiksha Chaupals, which is women in communities gathering together to see what could they be doing in education, where are the challenges, and how can they support their young children to study more, to really, and to not drop out. We talked about dropout as well, right? So these women got together in communities and actually had these conversations. But the real magic is not that they just had conversations. They actually identified local challenges. So you can see across 21,000 Shiksha Jopals, they identified over 51,000 challenges. And those challenges, as you can see, went from economic barriers to legal documentation to things like early marriage, safety concerns, so on and so forth. So they actually identified these challenges. And again, the bigger magic and something that's especially close to my heart is that they themselves identified the solutions. So the role of tech or the role of other NGOs or partners was not to actually provide solutions. It was to provide this space, this nudge for communities to come together and themselves identify challenges and solutions that they could actually implement. And today we have about 2,000 solutions that communities themselves have led in their own context. Isn't that so powerful? Like people being empowered to identify their challenges and lead improvements in their own context. So these were a couple of stories that I wanted to share with you about what are some challenges in the education space, but also what are some maybe ideas for you on what could be helpful in the education space when it comes to solutions or leveraging technology. I'll just end with maybe some principles that we discussed yesterday or this morning. I'm not sure. You would have heard from Varsha on some key principles that we need to keep in mind, right? And you would have seen parts of this come alive in the stories that we talked about. There was agency, especially in the last story, where it was community members leading their own change. But I'd like to introduce to you three more, and these are again based on principles and values that we've learned from a partner organization from Societal Thinking. And so please do read more about that from their websites. But I'd like to introduce you to three more and leave it as three questions for you to think about. One, catalyze interactions. What role can technology play in creating opportunities for interactions among multiple actors? And you got some ideas from the cases that we shared above. But is there a role that technology could play in getting more people to connect, come together, discover solutions together? Second, how do you keep diversity in mind? You saw in the PTM example, you saw in the institution budget utilization example. Diversity is all around us. We spoke about scale very early on in our conversation. Along with that scale is a whole lot of diversity that we have in India. And so the second question for you is, how do you think tech could design with diversity in mind? And how does it enable all of this diversity to come alive? The third one that I'd like to leave with you is, again, something that we saw come alive in the last one, or especially alive in the last one, is what role can technology play not just to share solutions? Because in the last one, we didn't share solutions, but it actually distributed this ability to discover solutions on their own. Communities led their own solutions. So again, what role can technology play in enabling actors to think, add their own value and to think about their own solutions? So these are three more that I wanted to add to you. There are so many more, but we have less time to discuss, which brings me to the last part of our conversation. We have exactly 10 minutes left. Would love to hear from you. Any questions, comments, or thoughts? Would be happy to discuss.
Come on, participants, it was an amazing session.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Yeah, I'm just asking the participants to post the questions in the chat
Oh,
box.
yes. So there's a question on should we focus on government schools or private? Um, it's a good question, and it's a difficult question. We need education to improve across the country. Um, a lot of times when we say private schools, we are usually thinking of the Delhi public schools and the New Horizons and national public schools of the world, but those are only at the top layer. There are so many private schools, sorry, that are low budget and maybe are equal in quality to government schools. So that's one. When you're thinking of private schools, which private schools are you exactly thinking of? That's one thing. That's one lens I would keep in mind. The second lens I would keep in mind is when there are private schools, there is automatic accountability and um, a sense of responsibility because somebody is paying. And so the school becomes responsible and accountable for delivery. So there is demand in case of private schools. In case of government schools, however, it gets a little bit complicated. Um, it's a bit difficult to show demand for quality in government schools. So I would say a lot of our work personally has focused a lot on government schools because that's where we see over 50% of the student population going. And these are students from really challenging backgrounds. And so we have prioritized government schools, but that's a question for you to really think on your own as well. Um, okay, we have a lot of questions. I'm going to maybe just go through and pick a few. How do we understand the base level of problems? I think that's a very good question. And I hope that came through some of the cases that we discussed as well, that it can be dangerous to react to a problem. It's helpful if you immerse yourself. Go talk to the people who are actually facing the challenge. Try and get direct data from them, but also try and get data from outside. Try and ask why is this happening and what are the challenges. And finally, I would say try and go in with an open mind. Sometimes we think something is a myth or something is a fact, but it's helpful to go in with an open mind and see what people's voices are really telling you. um, is AI must in hackathon? I'll let the team answer that question. There's another question on our own AI, so I'll let the team answer those questions. When we think of, so I'm reading Mankar's question. When we think of problems, we mostly think from student perspective. So systemic improvement is better or personalization for students. So you definitely should be thinking from the student perspective. That's ultimately who we want to um, have better education, lead a better life. But when it comes to delivery of your solutions or having your solutions reach students or being impactful, you have to keep in mind that it's not isolated. You're not going to go to a student. It's going to go through the system. And we had an image on the slide, right? There's this huge system that it goes through. So you definitely need to keep that system in mind when you're thinking of how solutions reach students. If you don't, then it's very challenging for your solution to be successful. That's where a lot of interventions fail as well. Um, as of education sector, challenges colleges to face issues? Why are we focused on schools and not skill development? That's a great question, Shahid. So a lot of our work has focused on the K-12 system, and that's why you saw a lot of data and stories from there. But you're absolutely in the right direction. We need to think of it as a continuum from education to employment, and that's increasingly where we are working towards as well. In fact, in a lot of states, we've started looking at vocational, pre-vocational, life skills during the school years and the school timetable as well. So I completely agree with you, and I'm hopeful. I think we're going in that direction of integrating this better. The last question from Yogeshwari is solution should be student point of view or teacher point of view or schooling point of view. So let me answer this by saying if you had to change your diet at home, very small system, right? Probably you and some family members. If you had to change your personal diet, you could eat differently, but you have to keep in mind who are the other people around you in your home and what role are they going to play and how you're eating differently. So even though it might be your challenge and your goal, you can't design without considering the family around you. So it's the same question. It's all very interrelated. Um, if we don't design keeping all of these multiple perspectives in mind, then again, we're designing for failure. So even though you might design for a specific individual, again, in the cases you saw, that solution was for a specific individual, like the teacher mentor or the parent or the school leader. But it was keeping the larger system in mind. So that's not something that we can skip over. So even if you're designing for one stakeholder, you have to keep the entire system in mind. Should the tool focus on making students job oriented or should it help them score marks? Yes, difficult question. There is no right answer for that. It has to be, unfortunately, for you, a holistic approach. We can't choose one over the other. Prerna says current system should show career options for students in earlier years of school. Yes, that is already happening. A lot of schools have career orientation programs. They have career counseling. They have even just exposure. So we worked with states to have them have students exposure to multiple kinds of jobs that are there. They actually visited factories. They visited institutions. They visited police stations, scientists, so on and so forth. Yes, from 6th to 8th grade, in fact. So middle school is where we start looking at exposing them to skilling, to employment, to employability, life skills, all of those. It actually begins from middle school, which is 6 to 8. So again, I'm hopeful it's already happening in a lot of states. I think it should be growing as well. Okay, I think I have answered most of the questions on the chat. But feel free to get in touch. The organizers have my details. I'm happy to discuss with you. Uh, I'm just being mindful of the time. I know you have other sessions as well, but thank you so much. It's been lovely interacting with you all. Really loving all of the interaction on the chat. You all were such an enthusiastic bunch, and hoping to meet some of you later on as well.
Right. Thank you, Rucha. That was an amazing session. Truly love the energy and active participation from the audience. I think it was a perfect session after lunch, so interactive. Love the myth versus fact, the case studies. Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much, Rucha. That was an amazing session. All right. Before we move on to the next session, let's bring the energy back again with